Hi, everyone. My name is Travis Steffens. I'm the Regional Director for the Explorers Club for Ontario and Nunavut. And we're going to, in a moment, introduce you to our guest speaker. But before I do, I just want to hand off to our chapter chair, George Karunas, to say hello.
All right, thanks so much, Travis. I hope everyone's doing well out there. I do have a few announcements to make tonight. If you are sponsoring a new member, or if you're planning on sponsoring a new member, the deadline for that is March 29th. So it's looming very quickly. So please keep that in mind. There is another virtual event coming up, not one of the Ontario Nunavut regional events, but actually one of the Quebec Atlantic or Maritime regional events coming up, and it's a big one. It's actually really interesting, and I think you might enjoy it. The details will be coming out in the newsletter that should be out next week. But just to give you a bit of a preview, it'll be March 25th at 7 p.m. and there will be actually technically 5 guest speakers. The first will be Michelle Labrec and Julie Ouimet. They're divers. They won the 2018 Citation of Merit here in the Canadian chapter. They're going to be talking about some of their explorations in the islands of Comoros, in Oman, and in the upper north coast of Quebec. Also speaking will be Professor Richard Foltz, who will be talking about some of the lesser known people living in the central Caucasus Mountains in Ossetia, Russia. So that'll be interesting as well. Dr. Marlon Lewis will be speaking, and Dr. Lewis is the chair of the board of directors for Amundsen Science, which is the organization that's responsible for all the scientific work that's done on the Canadian Coast Guard icebreaker Amundsen. So that'll be really interesting. We'll be talking about their work up in the high Arctic. And of course, the Quebec and Maritimes Regional Director, Kirsten Johnson, MD. She's a medical doctor. She's going to be organizing this and giving one of the talks as well. And she's on her way back from Chad right now, if I'm not mistaken. I believe she's probably in the airport as I'm speaking right now. And she's going to be talking about some of her work in Burkina Faso and Chad with UNITAR, which is the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. So she does a lot of work with the UN. Really interesting stuff. So a reminder, that is Thursday, March 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. So there will be another notice of that coming out in the newsletter. It's about 20 to 8 right now. 9 o'clock tonight, Eastern time, is the end of the Explorers Club winter auction. So if you've seen those emails coming in with all those auction items, you've only got just under an hour and a half to put in your bids if you want to get one of those items. And there's a couple of our Canadian connection companies in there as well. Kensington Tours is providing a trip to the Galapagos, which is going for a really good price right now, at least last time I checked. And Exodus Travels is providing a trip to let me think about this for a sec. I've lost it. Jordan, thank you. Yeah, I had to look up on my world map. Yes, to Jordan, including Petra and all of that. So those are just 2 of the auction items that you've got just over an hour left to bid on. As we were talking about a little bit earlier, we have the annual general meeting of the club is happening on April 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern, and that is the big annual meeting. If you remember, there was one not that long ago. It was in late 2020, but we're getting back to a more regular schedule, so it's going to be in April. And at that particular meeting, we will have the handoff from Richard Weiss to Richard Garriott, who is going to be our new president. So that it takes effect on April the 10th. And also leading up to that meeting, there is an important election and voting that has been in your inbox. Check your inbox because there's a ballot in there for amendments to the bylaws and also for board of directors elections. And that runs until April the 8th. So you've got from now until April 8th to review all of that material and decide who you want to vote for and whether you want to vote for these bylaw amendments. And I highly recommend voting because it's one of the most important things that you get out of your membership or fellowship, as the ability to steer the club in ways that you think it needs to go. And the democratic process of voting is the best way to do that. So if you're a member in good standing, that should be in your inbox. And if you haven't voted already, please do so. And I think that's it. We're in for a real treat tonight. Travis will do a proper introduction, but it was an absolute joy to be able to get Jeff Blumenfeld here tonight to speak with us. I had the absolute pleasure of sharing experience with him recently. We were both winners of an award from the Exploration Museum in Iceland. And I've known Jeff for quite some time. We've both been chapter chairs for a number of years. So we crossed paths quite a bit at headquarters. So without further ado, Travis, back to you. As always, if anyone has any questions for me about anything at all, I can be reached at chapterchair@explorersclub.ca.
Wonderful. Thanks, George. And yeah, it is an absolute pleasure being able to introduce Jeff Blumenfeld, because as he was describing to me earlier, some of the work he does with the club, he's really active in making sure that we're expanding our club and getting recognition for those that deserve it, the unrecognized explorers around the world. Jeff's the editor and publisher of Expedition News. He's a fellow of the Explorers Club. He's was the organization's former director of communications, and is currently its Rocky Mountain chapter chair, as well as a member of the Flags and Honors Committee. And as I mentioned, he worked very diligently on the Explorers Club 50, which I highly recommend people take a look at, because there's some really novel and interesting exploration being done by these incredible 50 members that that Jeff and a few others in the club helped nominate and select. He's the author of a few books, that one of which you'll be talking about tonight. And if you want to learn how to get funding for your expeditions, then you just got to go out and buy a couple of the books that he's got, because the first one, You Want to Go Where? How to Get Someone to Pay for Your Trip, Your Dreams, and get sponsored Funding Guide to Explorers Adventures. These are basically the same book that are telling you about how to fund expeditions. And that's something that comes up a lot for explorers, that they just don't know how to do. So young explorers and new explorers alike, and even old explorers, can learn a lot from those. In addition, Jeff belongs to the American Alpine Club. So he's based in Golden, Colorado. Are you actually in Boulder, I believe?
I'd say Boulder, yeah.
Yeah, in Boulder, and he's about to encounter a massive snowstorm, but living the dream down in Boulder is like skier's paradise. He's also a fellow of the Royal Geographic Society in London, where he's presented on a number of his talks and adventures. And today he's going to present to us about his latest book, Travel with Purpose, a field guide to voluntourism. So thanks so much, Jeff, for coming out and speaking to the membership. We have a few of us here and a few of us on the live stream watching as well, and then a number of us will be catching it a little bit later.
Well, great. Hey, thanks, Travis. This is a little different from my usual book talks, because it feels now that I'm talking to family. So it's a lot more comfortable for me to be talking to fellow explorers. You know, many of you have probably thought about writing your own book. And I had always had this burning desire to write a book. So I'm at this conference in New York in 2008, and this guy walks by, and I chat him up like I usually do. And I say, "What do you do?" And he says, he's a book agent. And I go, "Great, I've got to write a book." And he goes, yeah, I hear that a lot. What's your book going to be about? I said, "Well, my book's going to be about a guy who goes to the North Pole by dog sled. And my book's going to be about a guy that wants to climb a mountain in Antarctica named after himself." So the agent, his name is Terry Whalen, he says, "Well, okay, send me a book proposal." And
Talking about, you might want to be interested in this.
And I say to him, "Well, I don't know anything about writing book proposals." And the agent says, "Well, buy my book." And I go, "Whoa, what's your book?" "Book proposals that sell." Book proposals that sell. So I go, "Oh, okay, wise guy, I'll buy your book." And I go over it. It's all dog-eared. And I come back to him 3 months later with a 50-page book proposal. Because with a book proposal, you have to convince a publisher. And I didn't want to self-publish. I wanted to get a big fat advance, like name somebody. Michelle Obama. Want a big fat advance like Hillary Clinton. And the way to get that is you have to convince the publisher that you've got 10,000 or more friends who are going to actively buy your book. So you prepare the book proposal. I gave it to Terry Whalen. He sent it out, got a bunch of rejections, but then Skyhorse, a publisher in New York, bid on it. And that led to my first book, which talks about how to get funding for your expeditions. So that's kind of the journey that I've been on. So let me show you a couple of slides about that journey. Let's see if this works. Look at that. Whoops, got to go back to the end the show. Just a minute. This is why we have rehearsal, right? There we go. There's the book. Slideshow. Perfect book. Okay. So Get Sponsored was the first book, but I'm here today really to talk more about Travel with Purpose, my second book. And the premise behind this is you can lend a hand wherever you go, wherever you travel, you can lend a hand. The Explorers Club, obviously, we're familiar with that. I am chairman of the Rocky Mountain chapter. Let me just change this screen so I can see some of you here. I'm just going to change the view. Hold on a sec. Go back to this. Go back. All right. Anyway, so that's our Rocky Mountain chapter that's our sticker that we created, and the chapter is that's Maroon Bells out of Aspen, one of the more recognizable mountains in the Rocky Mountains. So really, one of my journeys started with this guy, Norman Vaughn. And this guy, because he saw the book on sponsorship, he calls me up and he says he wants to climb a mountain in Antarctica named after himself. And I'm thinking to myself, well, how does that happen? Well, it's Norman Vaughn, Norman D. Vaughn, who was on Admiral Byrd's 1928 to 1930 expedition. And at that time, nothing in Antarctica was named. And Byrd said, okay, Norman, that'll be your mountain, Mount Vaughn. And over the course of something like 80 years, Norman got enough funding to climb the mountain in Antarctica named after himself. You'll see that he got some funding from Prodigy, from Eagle, from FedEx. And there's Norman climbing the mountain named after himself in Antarctica. And of course, he had to be top roped to get up there. And there's Norman in the center. There's a guide, Vern Tejas, on the right. And kneeling on the left is his wife, Carolyn Muggy Vaughn. Now, there's a 38-year difference between the two. There's something about older explorers and their younger wives. And I said to Norman, she's 38 years younger than you already. And I said to him, well, what happens if there's a death? And he says, well, I'll get a new wife. And this is further information about Norman. And you can look him up online. And actually, I'm writing a screenplay about his World War II years. Then I get a call from this gentleman. Actually, Joe, how do I reduce the size of my screen? Let's see. Joe, how do I do that? So I can see the rest of the people while I'm talking and the screen?
Yeah, I think
window?
When you're sharing, Jeff, you're constrained to having the presentation open.
Okay, I got it. All right. Hang on, let me just share again. Okay. Sorry, guys. This guy calls me up and he wants to do something never before done in the history of mankind. And by now I'm like used to this. I go, okay. And I'm on the phone with him. Well, what do you want to do? He wants to set sail for 3 years straight, no resupply. And I go, all right, well, is this solo? He goes, no, he's going to bring his girlfriend. And I'm thinking to myself, girlfriend, tell me about your girlfriend. Well, there's a 30-year difference on this one. So he's undeterred. He wants to set sail, not for any sort of distance, but time. He wants to be at sea for 3 years straight. He felt that would be analogous to a mission to Mars. So he sends a pitch letter to Mars, to NASA, NASA says, he wants sponsorship from NASA. NASA says, very interesting. Let us know how it turns out. So he gets nothing from NASA on this trip. But undeterred, he sets sail on a 72-foot gaff rig schooner. And during this time, he's not going for distance. He's a creative artist. So he's outlining a heart in the ocean as he sails along. I said, Reed, what are you going to do for water? And he goes, no, I'll just go up towards the equator and I'll collect rainwater. And I said, okay, well, what do you do about, I don't know, scurvy? He says, no, I'm going to grow sprouts. I said, what do you do about protein? He says, no, I'll catch fish. And I'm thinking to myself, after 3 years at sea, you're going to be talking to fish, not just catching fish. So he goes out, he leaves on day 15. I mean, he leaves, and by day 15, the bowsprit falls into the water because he hits a container ship. Well, so he picks that up. Everything's going great until day 306, and his girlfriend is violently seasick. She's got to get off the ship. Totally violently seasick. Although it's not seasickness, it's morning sickness. And she's got to get off the ship. And they do that off of Western Australia. But he's going to be 1,000 days at sea, so he keeps going. Day 457. She has his son. She has his child back in Queens, New York. Where's Reed? Not at the bedside with his girlfriend. No, he's still out there. Day 846, he's now set the record for the longest solo sea voyage. And he comes back on day 1152. And I go out and I go see him, and I've arranged for him to see his son for the first time. And there's his son on the right. And the son is totally freaked out, maybe because I had just a few members of the press come and join him. So Reed, because of his determination and just his drive to succeed, is one of my favorite exploration stories. And you can learn more at 1000days.net. This beautiful woman is Barbara Hillary. And Barbara she called me up one day and she said she wanted to go to the South Pole and she was looking for sponsorship. I said, well, Barbara, tell me about yourself. And she's a retired nurse, again, from Queens, New York, at the end of the subway line. And I said, well, why, Barbara, why would anyone want to, I mean, I'm sure you're a wonderful woman, but why would anybody want to sponsor you to go to the South Pole? And she says, because I just got back from the North Pole. And Barbara Hillary sponsored herself, or about 50%. And she scraped together some sponsorship from Cool Clothing and Buck Knives and some other companies and Smart Wool to get herself to the North Pole, where she skied the last bit of distance to the North Pole. And based on that, she got sponsorship to ski to the South Pole, the last degree. And she did that at the age of 79. And of course, as we know, there is a pole at the South Pole that they keep having to move. And those are the kinds of skis that you use, where you put your big bunny boots inside of them. And that's her guide to the pole. And then she says to me, hey, I'm the first African-American woman ever to reach the North Pole. And I said, that can't be. So I get on Google and I go, and she says, prove me wrong. And I can't prove her wrong. And because she's an African-American woman that went to the North Pole and also went to the South Pole, she gets herself a giant wiki page, certainly bigger than my wiki page. Actually, I don't have a wiki page. And she gets herself on Wikipedia as the first African-American woman to go to the North Pole and the South Pole. Of course, that's impressive, but it was really impressive to see her picture up in Katz's Delicatessen in New York. Now that I was really impressed, quite impressed about. So when I talk to lay audiences, many of them say, okay, well, what's left to explore? And I try to explain to them that there's still plenty of things to explore and plenty of mysteries out there. Like, for instance, the story of this camera. This is so can you see me actually in the screen as well? Because all I see is the screen.
Yep, I can see.
Yeah, okay. This is the folding pocket Kodak that was known to be with George Mallory in 1924 when he attempted Everest with Sandy Irvine. Well, in 1999, they find the body of George Mallory, and they treat it with great respect. But they never see this camera. Where is the camera? Well, the camera must be with Sandy Irvine. So then they began to search for the body of Sandy Irvine. Well, that they didn't find either. So this mystery is still out there. Now, I teach a class at CU for a bunch of 20-year-olds. When I show them this picture, it's like phew, way over their head. They have no idea who this is. And of course, it's Amelia Earhart. And that's yet another mystery of what happened to Amelia Earhart. And to this day, they are still looking to answer the clue of whatever happened to Amelia Earhart. You may recall that in August of 2019, Bob Ballard went out in the Republic of Kiribati off of Nikomora Island with his Nautilus to try and find whatever happened to her. He came up dry on that. Other groups have gone, including a group called TIGHAR, TIGHAR. And there was a slight breakthrough when they found this piece of aluminum in 1991. And they're trying to match it up to what they know was a patch on Amelia Earhart's Lockheed Electra. But they don't have a good picture of this except on a piece of film, which we're trying to analyze to this day to see if perhaps the rivet holes match up. Then at least they know they have a piece of the plane. But they've gone down many dry holes trying to find what happened to her body. So this has all been part of my journey, and I felt that I could lend a hand wherever I go. And I felt also that being a volunteerist, not just an explorer, but a volunteerist, could really open the world for me. So I volunteered to be on a trip with Students on Ice to Antarctica. And as we know, the banana belt of Antarctica is the Antarctic Peninsula. So I talk about this when I give my book talks. People ask me how big was the ship that went across the Drake. I say, not big enough. It was 65 high school students, 20 chaperones on a 278-foot Russian ship. Now, I had been on cruises before, but this was pretty Spartan. And you also feel, if you really want to feel small, go on a ship to Antarctica. We got off every day onto the Zodiacs. And this will always be with me to be amidst 10,000 nesting penguins down in Antarctica. And I like to say you can't take a bad picture in Antarctica because it's like visiting, Whistler. If Whistler had a seashore, it's just absolutely gorgeous down there. And this is the scene at midnight, and as the sun. Here's the scene at midnight as the sun is about to set, and no Photoshop on this. If you want a good screensaver, go to Antarctica, and make a note of Students on Ice. Often they have scholarships. Actually, this is based in Chelsea, which is I believe it's near Ottawa.
Jeff, I'm just going to interject here. Jeff Green, the founder of Students on Ice, is a member of the Canadian chapter and was the winner of our highest honor, the Stephenson Medal in 2019. So he's a very good friend of the chapter and personal friend.
Oh, that's great to know. And what a terrific guy. And I am so privileged to have signed on as a chaperone. So I've gone from explorers to now actually getting in the field myself by trading some of my meager skills to get onto expeditions. In this case, I blogged about it, I photographed it, and I covered it for him, and I got to go on the trip. I still had to pay, but I got to be a chaperone on that trip. And by the same token, I got to be director of communications of the Gift of Sight expedition. If you're in Nepal and you have cataracts, it's almost like a death sentence. You are not only a burden to yourself, but your entire family, because they have to take care of you. They have to lead you to the bathroom. And for no other reason than the lens of your eye has started to cloud. But in Nepal, the cataracts get to the point where these people are walking around totally blind. So I went and signed on as Director of Communications with Dooley Intermed. Right in the center is Scott Hamilton, a member of the club. He's based in Stamford, Connecticut. And we went to Nepal. Actually, I went on 2 separate occasions as Director of Communications for what we called the Gift of Sight expedition. And there we elicited the support of young Buddhist monks who were trilingual. They spoke Nepali, English, and Tibetan. And they helped, when we got to a community, they helped notify the community that we were there, we were doctors, and we were looking for people who had eye problems. And because of literacy, illiteracy is so high in Nepal, we used the lazy eye chart. So we didn't ask them to identify any letters. We asked them to identify which direction the big capital E was facing. And that's what this woman is doing. And from that, we pre-screened patients for cataract surgery. And that surgery was done overnight. And I'll never forget this woman on the right. Her name is Chinja. Chinja was 65 years old. She had to be brought into the camp by her son. She was brought in piggyback style. She usually likes to walk around barefoot so she could feel the ground. She was totally blind by cataracts. And overnight, she got her sight back through this effort. Cataract surgery, I'm no ophthalmologist, but it is one of the more gratifying procedures in medicine because overnight you are cured. You go from absolute blindness to just about 20/20 overnight. And we set up these field hospitals to perform cataract surgery. And it just was a profound experience for me. I played around with the panorama feature on my iPhone to take this picture. So this is a fundraising effort as well for Dooley Intermed, based in New York, to raise funds for even more trips. And to do that, they brought along a videographer. And the videographer created this 2-minute sizzle reel, which I'll be proud to show you right now. And let's see if it works.
마음발라이나야 다도야 미스기데 다 준도 여바서다 미기 류냠도 지미 여바서다 마음발레로 중난 일이네.
Well, Mustang, being one of the poorer and more isolated regions of Nepal, has very limited access to medical care of any sort and virtually no access to eye care. When you think about the realm of diseases and the problems they cause, having problems with your eyes, losing the ability to see, has a profound impact on your life. There's not too many doctors you could go to and say, hey, are you willing to fly a bush plane to a remote mountain strip, ride horses for 3 days over 13,000-foot mountain passes, and do surgeries in a remote and dusty, windy region of the Forbidden Kingdom? It's a lot crazy, and maybe even borderline insane. Mustang is like Tibet 200 years ago. And to try and reach the people in this highly dispersed area, living out in remote settlements and camps, was a neat chance for us, living a kind of an insulated life as we do, surrounded by technology, to leave all of that aside and go out with simple tools for the most part and examine so many eyes and help so many people. If we can give people back the gift of sight, we change their lives forever.
I'm telling you guys, I saw that. That's actually the teaser to a 12-minute film. I knew I had to be part of that. And I went to Nepal, and it profoundly changed my life in the course of my career. And so that's the journey I've been on to bring us to this latest book called Travel with Purpose. Again, wherever we go as explorers, we can lend a hand and do that, not just be so inwardly focused on science and research, but actually give back. And so I did some research. As of 2014, obviously this is all before COVID, but 1.6 million active US volunteers. We're spending over $2 billion around 2015 for voluntourism. And then volunteering on vacation, look at these dates. April 2019, about a year before COVID, 1 in 4 travelers plan to give back on the go. I fully expect that when travel comes back, we're going to see a giant pent-up demand, not only to travel for vacation, but voluntourism is going to come roaring back. And even the independent, again, just a few months before COVID really hit, they were talking about volunteer tourism being on the rise. And so when we all get that vaccine and travel opens up, perhaps later in 2021, I think voluntourism is going to come back just roaring. Because until it does, try selling a travel book these days. It's not that easy. So just briefly, how do you select the right project? Well, there's a group called Volunteer Match. This is like the Tinder of voluntourism. You plug in your location where you want to go. And last time I looked, there was 120,000 volunteer organizations that were seeking help from upwards of 4 million volunteers. So that's Volunteer Match. This group was this is a great idea. You tell them where you want to go, and they say to you, you're going to Sierra Leone, they need sanitary napkins. And all they ask is take 5 pounds in your bag and put sanitary napkins in there. And then when you arrive at your hotel, they'll come pick it up. And you know what? Boom, you're a voluntourist. So voluntourism can involve just putting things in your bag. It can involve being there for a week, 2 weeks, months, building homes. It's all up to you. You're totally in control of that. How about this? You're planning a vacation. You're going on a cruise. You're going to Aruba. You talk to this group called Hope Floats, and they say, Aruba, great. Jose in the Humane Society, take a cab right to the Humane Society. He'll put you right to work. And not only that, you meet some of the locals. He'll tell you the best beaches. And then, after 4 hours cleaning cages at the Humane Society, then go back on the ship and have your buffet and play your bingo. But you become a volunteerist. You've given back. There's the question that I get is, what difference is 4 hours going to make at the Humane Society? And that brings up the parable of the starfish. The beach is littered with starfish, and this little boy is picking up a starfish and throwing it in. And he's picking up another starfish and he's throwing it back in the water. And this man walks by and he says to the little boy, what the hell are you doing? And the little boy says, I'm throwing these starfish back. And the man says, there are 10,000 starfish on the beach. What difference can you possibly make? And the little boy says, well, it made a difference to that one. And it made a difference to that one. And it's going to make a difference to that one. And that's the thing about voluntourism. Whatever you do can make a difference. So how do you select the right projects? Well, there's projects. It depends on your physical ability. There are some projects, certainly here in Colorado, that's the Flatirons of Boulder. Opportunities for you to get your hands dirty and get out there and start to sweat and build trails, for instance. I give a lot of talks to Rotary clubs, and Rotary is a big supporter of Shelterbox. Shelterbox is a brilliant idea. Whenever there's an earthquake or other disaster, and George, you may know about this, but they take this box and they put all the supplies needed in this box, including the box itself that can be used to help a family get back on their feet. Even very cleverly, children's supplies. They keep the kids busy while the parents get back on their feet. And you can see the Rotary seal right there. So there's a big hit at Rotary meetings. You know, you could support animal welfare, but don't expect to walk around like a pirate with a parrot on your shoulder. When you go to the Florida Keys Wild Bird Center, they don't let you near the animals until they know who you are. But the clean cages, come on in. You want to clean cages? You want to hose down the sidewalk? Great, they'll have you on there. You just don't get the fun jobs right off the bat when you're a volunteerist. Then I thought, well, maybe you don't really need a passport to be an effective volunteer. So I went to Las Vegas, which everybody thinks before COVID was this rich city, particularly on the Strip. Well, you get off the Strip and there's lots of poverty. And this beautiful lady started Baby's Bounty, where she needed volunteers to put together car seats with diapers and blankets and other supplies for new mothers. And this woman at the Lighthouse Charities in Las Vegas, she served 170,000 people in 2016 with her food pantries and giving job training and teaching English as a second language. And she has a little shop there. And then food banks. These food banks are all over the country, and the need is, particularly now with COVID, is so great. And I went to this group. They prepare 10,000 after-school meals, and they need up to 200 volunteers every day to service 220 Southern Nevada local school and community groups. I picked this place at random. There are food banks all over the country that you can volunteer at. And it's interesting, the kids, when they're not in school, are not eating. So they put together these backpack for kids. And you look at some of these foods and it's pretty sugary. But, and I said, it's like, there's a lot of sugar here. And the woman there said, Jeff, this is all some kids have to eat for a weekend until they get back to school. So how do you raise money for your volunteerism projects? This couple on the right had a Valo Moon, and they asked for wedding donations in lieu of gifts. And they volunteered in Nepal for Habitat for Humanity. Another woman that I spoke to did a topless car wash. I said, how did that work? And she says, well, we had a big sign that said topless car wash. And when you pull the car in, we'll clean your car, but we didn't have any ladders, so we couldn't get to the top of the car. So that became their topless car wash. She made $5,000 in a weekend and donated it to herself for a volunteerism trip. You can get matching donations from employers. You do crowdsourcing and local business sponsorships. This subject is near and dear to my heart. And believe me, when I went to Nepal for the first time, and I'm there and I'm chewing my cuticles, and Scott Hamilton's going, get your hands away from your mouth, he said. And this is before COVID and wash your hands and use hand sanitizer. This was a couple of years before all that hit. And you are so vulnerable when you get to a place like Nepal. You can only drink from bottled water, and you have to hold it upside down to make sure that the water wasn't resealed. The food you eat, it's got to be hot cooked food. No tuna fish salads, no salads anyway. Then you get your inoculations. There's a group here in the States called Passport Health, might be in Canada as well. They'll ask you where you're going and tell you exactly the inoculations you need. I became a human pincushion. These dogs, these monkeys, so cute. Stay away from them. Absolutely stay away, because they're not vaccinated. Many of them are rabid, and the monkeys have sharper teeth than you do. But I must admit, they are pretty cute. Don't walk around Kathmandu, with wearing earphones, listening to music. You need to be situationally aware. Kathmandu is a city that wants you dead. You're walking down and there are telephone wires hanging everywhere. There are electric generators outside the stores because the power goes on and off. There are big holes in the sidewalk. You have to be situationally aware. And leave your bling at home. Not a good place to bring your Rolex, even though, of course, they are a sponsor of the Explorers Club, and we love Rolex. Probably not, Nepal is not the place to bring your Rolex. Add medical evacuation insurance. That's important as well. And You know, George spoke about staying safe, and I never heard him talk about dire rescue. But this was my best friend. This is Cal colostrum. And somehow that's supposed to help you when you have diarrhea. And of course, Purell, you bathe yourself in that. And this again was before the whole big COVID craze for hand sanitizer. And I got to admit, guys, I pulled a rookie move. So I've been in Nepal for 10 days. We get to the VIP lounge at the Kathmandu airport. The VIP lounge, somebody had a card. We got in there, and I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, boy, I haven't had salad. I haven't had fresh fruit for 10 days. And it's wrapped in plastic. How bad could it be? Yeah, it started to kick in over the North Atlantic on my way home. So you're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting. So get on your way. From Dr. Seuss, or as I like to say, lend a hand wherever you go. So get sponsored, Travel with Purpose. Those are on Amazon. And if you'd like to be on the comp list for Expedition News, just send me an email. I'll be happy to put you on there. So it's a little disconcerting because I couldn't see all of you. But if there are any questions at this point, you're going to want to unmute yourself. And then if we have time, I can talk a little bit about getting sponsorship for your trip.
I have a question for you, Jeff. This is more of an opinion. I'm kind of looking for your opinion more than a definitive answer here. And how do you feel about the narcissistic trend of going to some of these places and volunteering to help build a school just for the purpose of getting the perfect Instagram photo? And yes, I suppose it is helping the locals, but is there more harm than good being done in some of these situations? Do you have to really be careful about that kind of thing?
You have to be self-aware. And not many people are. They go on these trips. It's called the White Savior Complex. And you can, if you look that up, you'll see a lot of that. They're going, and there's a lot of actually satire. And I write about those in the book. I write about the downside of volunteerism. First of all, you shouldn't go there to think you're going to be great on social media. Although it is tempting for all of us to say, hey, look at me. You know, I'm in Nepal. And I'm helping these blind people. That's okay, but it's not ethical to do that. It's good to be there. You should just go to be there and do it. The temptation, though, is to share every moment of your trip. And I've been guilty of that as well. I talk about the trip. I talk about here I am on the trip. I try not to pose that much with the locals. And that's called the White Savior. And if you look that up, if you Google that, you'll see a lot of examples of that. The other downside of volunteerism is you'll get to an orphanage in Nepal, and these kids, many of the kids are not orphans. The business owner goes up into the hillside and says, "Please give me your child. I'll take him to this city. We'll educate him, and he'll live with me in the orphanage." And then the kids are dressed not great. They're fed okay in most of these cases, but the kids are taught to kind of suck up to the visitors and get to know the visitors so that the business owner of those orphanages can get money. And so that's a downside, certainly of volunteerism. Yes, more or less.
Yeah, similar concern. And I look at, volunteering within my own country, and certainly we have areas in Canada, remote areas where people are living. And my concern is also, I know what you need. I'm going to come in and I'm going to help you. I'm going to help your community because I know what you need. Imposing what I think they need. I'm exaggerating maybe, but probably not for some people. And how to balance that. I think I'm often worried about, we like to think we're going to remote parts of the world to help these poor people somewhere. Do they want our help? Do they want our ways? Do they like, and then don't go so far. Why does it have to be Kathmandu? What about in our own backyard? Now, you gave some examples within the United States where, hey, you can do it right here at home. But my real concern is about the imposition of, I'm coming in as your savior. I know what you need, and I'm going to help you, whether you like it or not, type thing. Not quite, but in any case, how to manage that.
Well, it starts with being self-aware. And I know that's a difficult thing, particularly with millennials who are locked onto their phones, constantly taking selfies all the time. But I think it's up to the sponsoring organization to set guidelines on that and say, you don't take your picture in front of the locals, or you get their permission before you take a picture. One bit of advice I have is to bring an instant camera and ask some of the locals if you can take their picture. Then you take their picture and you hand them a print. Give them a picture. So that's a little easier if you want to have your picture taken with them. But there needs to be controls from the sponsoring organization. They need to control that. Otherwise, it's really not ethical because it's hard to say to a millennial, you need to be more self-aware about that. That could be difficult on that. And believe me, I've fallen for that as well. I've got a Facebook account and I only post when I'm doing something cool on it. I don't post what I've had to dinner. I post cool stuff. And going to Nepal was pretty cool. So I posted things, but I also had some text attached to that to say, here's the difference we're trying to make here.
Yeah, I would suggest that it's not just millennials, but it's anybody, young people in general. All young people throughout the ages always think that they can save the world.
Well, and they can do good work. The other thing I talk about is, okay, you're going to volunteer with Habitat for Humanity. You've never picked up a hammer in your life. And you're going to go over there and they're going to put you to work, like laying a foundation. Well, in some cases, when the volunteers have left, the locals redo it. They have to redo the work. So the volunteers come, they feel that they've really helped out. This is an overgeneralization, but it's happened. The locals come and have to fix it because this is not the thing for you to do. But one thing you can do is teach English as a second language. If you can speak English, you can teach English. I mean, I wouldn't go over there and try to do plumbing, but I could probably teach English. I have some command of that language. So and do that as well.
Jeff,
yeah.
On the same topic, I was reading some reviews of your book, and there's one really great review that said they were skeptical about volunteerism until they had read your book, because you sort of highlighted the pros and cons and really clearly laid out what the ways that one should do volunteerism. I'm curious about how the research went into that, because some of those ethical lines and such that you might have made might have been a bit ambiguous at times. So how would you have gone making those decisions when you were writing the book in the first place?
Well, I did a lot of interviews. I volunteered myself. I went to a Habitat for Humanity near Denver. And the guy, I said, here I am. And it was so easy to sign up. You just go online, pick a time, you show up. He makes you look at a 5-minute safety video where I learned the term PPP before COVID. And they gave you 5 minutes of video. And then he says to me, take that lamp apart. And I hadn't done that since shop, in grade school. So here I am, volunteering. I made a very tiny difference. So I volunteered, I interviewed a lot of people, did a lot of research. I looked at a lot of the satire in regards to white savior complex. I went overseas, volunteered my time. And one of the things I say in Travel with Purpose is trade your skill as leverage to get onto a trip. If you're a registered nurse, many expeditions need RNs. So trade your skill to get on that trip. Okay. If so medicine, trade your skill to do that. Logistics, trade your skill to get on there. You know, the only skill I really have is writing, communicating, promoting, and photography. So that's what I traded to leverage myself on 2 Nepal trips, 1 Antarctica trip. And that was all part of the research for the book.
Sorry to follow up, but I wanted to follow up about the book, because you talk about. Would you say that this would be a book that anyone can pick up, or would it be more centered for Americans? I imagine that any English speaker would be able to take from this book knowledge on how to travel better and how to travel with purpose. It's not just
the need
specific.
is so great. The need is, you go to Kingston, Ontario, and you'll see poverty there. The need is so great in every city. There are food banks throughout North America, throughout the world. There are volunteer groups that are desperate for your help. The homeless. Pick a subject. You know, homeless, opportunities to volunteer for that. Mental health. Volunteering at schools as an aide at school. It's a little more difficult now because people are afraid to get close to each other, but that's going to end, and the need is always going to be there. Yeah. So this is a book. If you speak English, this book is for you. And I talk about Canadian programs as well. Not the least of which is Students on Ice, which is
of course.
It's students from throughout North America.
Well, my last short comment will be, I think, although it's tough to pitch a book during COVID, I think it's a well-positioned book for people who, when they go to travel, as you mentioned, the pent-up demand will be great. And so it's something probably a lot of people should be thinking about now.
Well, and it's also, wherever you go, I make a lousy tourist. I don't like to lie on a beach when I could be helping out at a turtle farm. Believe me, not for 6 days straight. If I could, you know, instead of walking through some cheesy t-shirt shop, get off the cruise ship, catch a cab. This organization, Hope Floats, will tell you exactly where to go. And they'll be waiting for you when you get there. Help out, meet the locals, rather than spend your time with, you know, people with, black socks and sandals for a full week. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but yeah, the need is.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I'm often curious. I run a travel company that takes kind of fairly well-heeled people all over the place, and they often want to bring some service element into the trip, if not for themselves, for their children, to expose them to it. And I often struggle to find projects where you can actually benefit the project as opposed to the project benefiting you if you have a short window of time. So a lot of the projects we look for end up saying to us, unless you can give us 3 weeks of your time, you end up being more of a burden than a service. Yeah. And I don't know if you've come across that and have any kind of thoughts. It's something we often look to try and overcome.
Well, that's why I wrote about the fact that you're not going to be able to walk around like a pirate, and you're not going to get the glamour jobs because they don't know who you are. They're going to give you something that you really can't screw up, like cleaning out a cage at a Humane Society. I write about a resort in Fiji that actually gives you an opportunity to reseed reefs. You know, they have the little tray and they have little starter coral, and you're able to do that. You just don't get, if these people want the glamour jobs, if they want to be riding elephants, you know, and feeding elephants, you may not be able to find that. And yes, they will ask for more commitment of time because they have to train you. So really the only answer is you got to find something they can do that takes no training, like working in a food shelter, you know, making breakfast for the homeless of Haiti. I wouldn't go to Haiti right now, but it's got to be a job they could just walk in and do.
I think there's a good opportunity now. I find people are willing to travel for longer, keen to take fewer airplanes. And I think it unlocks this a little bit more.
That's true. You could go to a turtle farm, but it's got to be something that anybody could do. It doesn't take training. Again, at the Florida Wild Bird Center, they're not going to let you pet the birds. They have no idea who you are. Yeah. You get there, they put a hose in your hand and say, hose that off. You can't really screw that up. But yet it's something that has to be done there. You go to a humane society and you clean cages. That's got to be done. You're not taking the job away from somebody. It's just, unless you've got 3 weeks, you got to be trained. English for second language. How about that? You go to a classroom and the kids start to imprint on you. The kids fall in love with you and then you're gone in a week. That's hard. That's hard on you and it's hard on the kids. It's hard to blow in and blow out with ESL. I mean, it's possible you could come in and teach a class or sing some songs, but these kids start to fall for you. And it's tough to do that after only a few days. That's why you're back to cleaning cages or taking lamps apart. At that,
I think the skills exchange is one of the strongest plays that we bring into it, because so many travelers have skills and really don't even realize how valuable they are in other settings.
Right.
Right. Hey, it's James. Greg and I know each other, actually. I took him to, hi, I'm James from Toronto. Is it okay just to interrupt like this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Sorry. Greg and I know each other because actually he came to visit a project I do in Ethiopia. I teach medicine there, and I actually get volunteer doctors to come, and we do a pre-briefing, and it's very specific environment. So you actually obviously need to do a lot of learning about how to be effective there, right? It's not the same exact opposite as cleaning out cages. So no wonder you need the time. And I'm sure MSF, who I work with sometimes, they first mission should be a year. You really need to know the culture. And like you said, you don't want to leave too early before you feel like you've helped out in the ways you want to. But you made me think of why wouldn't I engage more with the Ethiopian charities who could use 5 pounds of feminine hygiene products or whatever, right? Why not? There's tons of them. I know there is. You see them all around. So I like the idea, at all levels, but it makes me think there should be and I think there is, like you said, volunteer match and that type of thing, that almost copies the NGO. There's a few NGOs, review NGOs, right, to say how much money goes into operations, how much goes into fundraising.
Right.
So I like the idea and think that if you always have these matchmakers that can actually say, they need 5 hours of cage cleaning here in Boca Raton, Florida, but they or whatever it happens to be, right? And you can do that just if you're there for the weekend. But we'll also find places that really meet these quality standards, because then we really need to engage in a massive way to reclaiming our environment, to ending poverty, to redistributing, wealth, and volunteering is such a great way to do it. So I just really applaud you for doing that, and I are making this even a bigger deal than it should be, or as big a deal as it should be. I mean, and I wonder if you heard about that. Is there a growing opportunity for people who can really as a middle man or woman to help facilitate this relationship?
Well, there are some organizations. Well, actually, I have about 30 organizations in the back of the book that I talk about that you could actually.
Great. All right, I should look.
Yeah. Not that I need the extra $2, but I did research about 30 organizations that can use the help. One in Connecticut, AmeriCares. I actually went on one of their airlifts. It was a 24-hour flight to Honduras, where we delivered supplies, and that was amazing. So you could go up to any NGO and say, "What do you need?" And the other, by the same token, wherever you travel in the world, take 5 pounds in your luggage and bring medicines, bring foods, bring something that can be used locally. And then this organization, Pack for a Purpose, is based all over the country. I'm sorry, all over the world. They have locations.
Oh, cool.
If you look that up.
We've worked with Pack for a Purpose for about 8 years and seen them firsthand operate
Oh, really?
seamlessly,
Cool.
I would say. Mhm.
Really?
They're
Oh, really?
brilliant.
With Rebecca Rathane, I think her name is.
Yeah, Rebecca, exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
she's a pistol.
So one of the
Yes.
things I try to promote, packing with a purpose, I do it just on my own, but I encourage other people. Anybody flying to the Canadian Arctic, to these remote communities, you have a weight allowance on the plane of X kilos.
Right.
And if I'm under the X kilos, I weigh my pack beforehand. And the day before I fly, I go to the grocery store and I buy the remaining kilos worth of oranges. And I just take it up to that community, that remote community that's fly-in communities only. So everything's extremely expensive. A tomato could cost $8.
Okay.
So I just bring these oranges because oranges travel well, better than most other fruits. And I just donate it to the local community center or the senior citizens there, the seniors community. And I try to promote and encourage other people to do the same when they travel to the Arctic. Just fill up your weight allowance. You're allowed X kilos of weight. If you're under, fill it up with oranges or whatever else you like to donate. Take it up there. The other thing they love to have in the high Arctic is sandpaper, especially fine grained sandpaper for the carvers, for the soapstone carvers.
You wouldn't even know that.
Yeah.
You would have no clue.
Yeah. And it weighs nothing, costs us nothing. You just stick it in your pack with you.
So perfect. Because, I usually overpack because I listen to George and I have to take everything for every eventuality and double D batteries, even if I've got nothing that runs on D batteries. But it occurs to me, I've been to Iqaluit and Yellowknife, and it occurs to me, Band-Aids, they're super lightweight, but that's something that people would need up there. And sandpaper is something brilliant.
Yeah.
And I also like the fact that it's lightweight.
Yes.
Of course, I've got enough double D batteries.
You can leave those up there too. They'll find a use for them.
Those could be, when we went to Nepal, we had to use a soft-sided duffel bag, none of these rolling things because they had to put it on top of the Jeeps and lash them down. I couldn't even lift the thing. It was so heavy, way overpacked,
So
way over.
an easy thing to do though is leave your slightly used equipment like rubber boots and stuff like that. Leave it up there in those communities. They have people who would be happy to have that. So don't carry it all back with you. If it's slightly used, there'll be people who are happy to have it.
So you know what? You're a volunteerist.
Yep.
It's all up to what you want to do. Whatever you do will be helpful. And so even if it's just bringing sandpaper, you're a volunteerist. I wouldn't take selfies around it necessarily. I don't think that's a very heavy lift to bring sandpaper, but that's it. So that's kind of my pitch. Next time I can talk about how to raise money for expeditions, but I appreciate this opportunity. Do we have, how many people are online?
I checked that Joe didn't get any comments. He was checking the YouTube commenters and no one had put anything up. So I guess they're not typing in tonight. But I want to give you a big thanks, Jeff. That was fantastic. We're getting a few comments from people who have left. This was very inspiring. These are from those travel folks as well. And so they're going to get these ideas into the hands of the right people. And so appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been fun. And George, we'll see you on April 6th.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jeff. It's great to have you here. And I love listening.
See you here. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. That was our March meeting for the Explorers Club Ontario Nunavut.